from the Ultimate Poser, B-Rat G from Malibu. Talking about Ultimate Posers, we're going to be talking about the New York Giants media. This is Tim, this is New York Giants Star Talk, powered by Online Big Blue LLC. I come from a old school mentality, and I think a lot of people already know that. I followed the Giants since 1976. I've talked about that ad nauseum, so we're not going to talk about it again. But the media has shifted. The New York Giants sports writers, or the beat writers, or the beat reporters, or whatever the hell you want to call them, they've gone down at times of different and kind of, I think in some ways, a dark path where it's almost alien to come out and criticize the Giants or to potentially print the truth at certain periods of time because it may not be the right thing to say for their readers and maybe for the Giant organization itself. I don't know. I cannot tell you this. I come from a time period where you had writers like Dick Young and Dave Anderson and Joel Sherman, and Phil Mushnick. I think he still works for the Post. I don't remember. And people like Paul Schwartz before he went over to ESPN, and even a young Mike Lupica. Can never say Lupica. And the thing about sports writing in the 80s and in the 90s and even going into the 2000s, you had multiple papers. You had, of course, you had the Times, you had the Post, you had the Daily News, you had Newsday, you had the USA Today. You also had I can't remember the name of the paper that was it was a regular, just like a sports paper. And it was only around for a couple years, but you had the National and the American, I think it was called. But you had these guys that were with the team, the Giants, or the Yankees, or the Mets, or the Knicks, or the Rangers, and they followed these teams, and they reported the truth. Now, sometimes the truth is just that person's perception, but perception being is that they would tell you something, it would be their opinion, but a lot of times there's a modicum of truth in that opinion. And they seem to, like I said, back in my day, stick with that opinion. Not like me. Like I said, people always tell me, you don't change your mind. I don't change my mind unless someone gives me a reason to change my mind. But nowadays, if you take a look at sports writers in general and beat writers for the Giants, they almost seems like they want to be part of the story. And they almost seems like, and I think this has to do a lot with social media and Twitter and everything else and the instant gratification of these certain these certain platforms. But the problem is, are they really conveying the truth to the fan base? Or are they basically sitting there in the hip pocket of the New York Giants? I find it funny that after the loss on Sunday, you had so many people talk about how the Giants were broken, how the offense was broken, how Dan Jones is probably not the answer. You saw that on Twitter. You saw it on all other social media avenues. You saw it in the papers. But then as Tuesday rolls around, which was yesterday, you start seeing again the claims, the Giants failed Daniel Jones. It's the Giants' fault that the organization as a whole, that it was their fault that they didn't put the pieces around Daniel Jones. It's, so there's no one else to blame. And it's almost like in some regards, when you go back to when John Mara said, we did everything to screw this kid up. It's almost like they're just taking exactly what the Mara playbook was and going with that story. Is it truth? Is it honesty? I've always said this before. Your initial reaction to something is usually probably your best reaction, or your initial thought on something is usually correct. Because I've said this before, as something gets behind you, the mind's eye wanders a little bit, and you don't know, and you have a little bit different perception of reality. But we're talking a 24-hour span. I love the post that Art Stapleton came out with yesterday and says, I truly mean this. A big part of the current generation of fans wants to tell you why the team you cover sucks and why you don't know what you're talking about more than appreciating their team winning and what you have to say about them. Well, boo fucking who? Don't I have Rod Tidwell? I have to have a Rod Tidwell quote. Because that is the first thing I thought of. I mean, really?
Well, boo fucking who?
I did have it. No, a lot of fans want you to tell the truth. A lot of fans want you to use your inside knowledge of the team, your inside access of the team, to actually go out there and say things that are truthful about the Giants and sit there and go like, okay, this is what's going on. And not just kind of sit there and say, well, you really have to just, look into things and see how things really are. And then he came out with another post, which I thought was great, because if you want to believe in the Giants week to week, last year the Lions started 1-6 and rallied when no one thought they could finish at 9-8. Now look at them, not comparing talent, just an example. No matter how rare this team that could suddenly find it, all of a sudden now it's the prevailing wind that you want to turn around and say good things about the Giants because of the fact that Lord knows we don't want to speak the truth. We've said it before. We've said it a million times on another podcast. The truth shall always set you free. But the problem is this. I don't know if certain parts of the fan base doesn't want the truth. I don't know if certain parts of the fan base just want to avoid the truth. But I do think sometimes the sports writers are complicit in the fact of they talk about the fans pushing false narratives. I think sometimes they're a little complicit pushing false narrative. There's a Sports Illustrated article that came out by a sports writer, a beat writer for the Giants. We're not going to name names today. And basically she said, again, she reiterated and this is why I find this interesting. She then, on the same day, reiterated the talking points of the Giants have done everything to screw up Daniel Jones. Okay. All right. Do we see maybe a narrative coming out here? Do we see maybe a thought process that maybe someone turned around and said something to someone, maybe within the Giant organization, that said something to some of the beat writers and said, hey, listen, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't be so hard on the team because we screwed up Daniel Jones. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I feel bad about it. And like I said, there's no more hard-hitting sports writers. It was easy to bash Joe Judge when he did stupid things. And now I think it's just easier to be a part of the story as a sports writer and not really tell the truth and have more of their perception and then go out and attack the people who are actually looking for you to give them the truth. And instead saying, okay, these are the things that are going on and these are the things that we see in front of us. Because back in the day, before Instagram and Twitter and MySpace, I know MySpace. I had to throw MySpace in there. I hadn't thrown MySpace on the video in a while. We didn't have the inside look into the locker rooms. The only information that we ever got was from the beat writers. And is it my perception that maybe some of the beat writers have just gotten lazy and find it a lot easier to use social media to convey a story that maybe isn't 100% accurate, and then it's easier for them to turn around and attack the fan base who go after them on social media for saying something stupid? I get people going after me on social media for saying stuff all the time. It doesn't offend me because I don't care. But I'm not going to sit there and bash a generation of fans because you may or may not be in the back pocket of the New York Giants. There was almost like the sports writers were the enemy. I remember going back into the 80s. It was almost like the sports writers, you go back even to the 90s with Bobby Bonilla. I'll show you the Bronx. They're almost like the sports writers were the enemy of the teams. Because of the fact that it's just, they spoke the truth. They said the things that you didn't want other people to hear. They spoke those truths. And sometimes it's just, maybe it's in messaging. But the messaging to me is this. If you're not really looking into what's going on, if you're not really pointing out what the team is doing, how do you sit there and have credibility? And I love Ralph Falciano came out too on the same day as those other stories. Don't blame Daniel Jones for this Giants mess. Lay it on the line. It's almost like I said, it's almost like they all got sat in a room and said, okay, here's the talking points of the story. This is what we want you to put out. I think one of the dumbest things I saw was someone posted that Kayvon Thibodeau has 4 sacks and Mr. Parsons of Dallas has 4 sacks. That's a great comparison, guys. That's a great comparison. Yeah, let's compare those two. We got Mr. Collins allegedly coming to talk to the Giants. I mean, really? Is a guy coming off a knee injury? Do you really think he's going to be back anytime soon? I mean, do you really think he's going to be back anytime before maybe week 10 or 11 and the season's going to be over then? And you're going to bring in a guy that's going to dip into your salary cap because of the fact that you think it's going to make a difference? He's not even in football shape. But that's all right. We're just going to do that. I also love this one. I also saw someone asked about the last time a team with a positive turnover differential lost as the Giants did to Miami. And the Giants did that twice last season to Dallas and Philadelphia. Okay. I know everyone's starving for offensive linemen, and they really think that they're going to bring in Collins and he's going to make a difference, and things are going to go great. Everyone's got to just come back into reality a little bit. Come back into reality a little bit. You were going to sit there and you were going to, you know what's funny? When someone like Boomer Esiason comes out and says Daniel Jones deserved more blame, not just the offensive line. I got to listen to this. Hold on, everyone. I got to listen to this.
I felt about Daniel Jones after the Seattle game. He got hit in the back by Devin Witherspoon coming off on a slot blitz. He didn't even know it was coming. And if you look at the tape and you go back, there's a guy standing there. I forget who it was. It was, I don't know who it was. It was probably inside receiver. It could have been Wan'Dale Robinson. I'm not sure. He's standing there waiting for the ball because he knows that he's the hot receiver. And Daniel never saw it. That's not on the offensive line. Everybody's screaming about the offensive line and the offensive coordinator and the coach this and the coach that when the player is not doing what he's supposed to do for whatever reason. And then when I hear Joe Buck say that he talked to Brian Daboll about the energy of his quarterback, that's all I need to know. I mean, you cannot be a flatliner and play in this league. Aaron Rodgers is not a flatliner. You know, Joe Burrow is not a flatliner. Patrick Mahomes, throw him out there with any 10 guys. He's not going to flatline himself into the locker room and lose.
When Boomer Esiason of WFAN is the voice of reason, we're all doomed. I've said this a million times before. When I am the voice of reason and logic, and people are following me, we're going off the cliff. So, like my wife always says, don't put him in charge. She even knows that. Collins is also first visiting the Jets. I mean, salary cap wise, it's just a horrid thing, and you're gonna. This is just. You know, I hope he signs, but like I said, I don't see him coming back to like week 10. I don't see him making a difference. And the stupid idiots that put out the fact that John Feliciano played 32 snaps at left guard versus the Cowboys, allowed 0 pressures, finished with 84.2 pass blocking rating and a 71% blocking rating, which was 8th overall. Wow. Coaching. I hear that with people with Richie B. Coaching. That's coaching. John Feliciano has taken 11% of the total snaps for the San Francisco 49ers in the last 5 games. Just let that sit in for a minute. He's taken 11% of the snaps over the last 5 games. He doesn't even play. He has one good game and people are like, oh my God, what the greatest thing in the fucking planet was. I mean, it's just one of these things that, yeah, you need to go get offensive line up because you got injuries, you got other things involved, but you also have other things involved, such as the salary cap. You also don't want to bring in we brought in Justin Pugh, and I'm sorry, Justin Pugh's at the tail end of his career. I hope he plays well. I hope he does well. But I don't have high hopes or high expectations, especially over a long period of time. Remember when we brought back Brandon Jacobs, the running back, and he ran for 100 yards after he'd been away at San Francisco? And he hadn't played in a while, and he ran for 100 yards, and then that was the end of that because he blew out his hamstring. I forgot what the injury was, but then he didn't play again. Sometimes reaching back into the past to get something doesn't always mean it's going to work. So it doesn't mean it's not going to work, but it also doesn't mean it's going to work. It's I don't know. It's one of those things I would just like to see people report the truth, be honest, and show more. What is it? There's another Art Stapleton one. I have questioned ownership throughout this entire run. I've asked John Mayer personally why he has confidence, and he could get to the next right guy. Things are going poorly right now, but the cycle of throwing out GMs and head coaches every 2 years has to stop. Giving up on players in their second year is not the way to build a team. Some of Shane's moves that I celebrated are not viewed in the same light right now, but to give up in year 2 would be malpractice unless something completely unforeseen happens. These are also probably the same people that wanted Joe Judge to stay until he shot himself in the foot. It's just Giant football is a mess. The Giant media landscape, sport writers wise, is a mess. You could reach for whatever you want to reach. It is what it is. Hopefully the Giants can win some games this season. Figure out a way to get an actual professional quarterback and rebuild the offensive line and rebuild hope with the fan base. Because like I said, it's just really weird that Monday, everyone was saying one thing. And then Tuesday, everyone's saying, well, none of this is Daniel Jones's fault. If I was a conspiracy theorist, I would say Bigfoot got in a room with the Loch Ness Monster and the Abominable Snowman and the Giant beat writers and John Mara, and something was figured out. Oh, we're going to have a lot of fun shows this week, so make sure you stay tuned. And again, don't forget to like, don't subscribe, don't forget to ring that bell because you want to know why. That'd be awesome.